Bright Tuty. Every student matters.
Welcome to another lecture, and in this lecture we are going to continue with our chapter 2 of class 9 alternate English, which is the ogress and the two orphans. Now, as we have read, the two boys who were orphans, who lost their parents at a very young age, they decided to do something independently, and that is why they started trapping the birds and animals so that they could sell them and get some money in return. Now, when they started to do it, there was something strange that they noticed, that the heads of the birds were chopped off. Somebody was eating the heads of the birds. So they decided to get hold of that culprit. They did it once, but it did not help them. Nobody was caught, and then after a gap of few days, they tried it again. And whom were they able to catch? It was an old woman who ate off the head of the birds. The boys were obviously angry, and they came in front of the woman. The moment they did so, the woman casted a magical spell on them because she was an ogress, because she was a monster. And the boys started believing in whatever she said. The woman told them that she was their relative. The boys believed it and they started following her. They went to the home of this ogress. Now, initially they were obviously scared, but the woman was taking very good care of them. The final desire of this woman was to eat these boys, but before that she wanted them to get fat and healthy. Now, one night, the younger brother, who used to sleep alone in a room inside, and the elder brother used to sleep in the outer room. So the younger brother overheard the ogress and her husband talking to each other. And what were they discussing about? They were discussing about eating the younger boy. This made the younger brother very, very, sad and very scared. The other day when he told his brother, the brother was not ready to believe him, but he later agreed to sleep in his room for the night so that even he could hear what the husband and wife were discussing about. So let us continue now. So as arranged, when the old woman had gone to sleep, the younger boy stealthily went over to his elder brother's bed, and the elder brother went over to the bed by the side of the old woman. When in the dead of night, the ogress's husband returned home, the elder boy had fallen fast asleep and did not hear any conversation between the ogress and the husband. The next morning, the younger one asked his brother if he had heard anything that night. Unfortunately, the elder brother said he had not heard anything as he was fast asleep. So as they had decided, when the old woman had gone to sleep, so after the old woman went to her room to sleep, the younger boy stealthily, very quietly, with a pin drop silence, he went into the room of his elder brother. The elder brother went to the room of the younger brother. So when in the dead of night, in the middle of the night when we are sleeping in the most peaceful manner. So in the dead of the night, when the ogress's husband returned home, the elder boy had fast fallen asleep. So he was asleep and he was sleeping very tightly. He was so tired that he was not even aware of anybody talking around him. So he did not hear anything. The next morning, the younger one asked his brother if he had heard anything that night. But unfortunately, it was a very bad chance that the elder brother said he slept and could not hear anything. So the arrangement was to be repeated. And at the suggestion of the younger brother, The elder brother slept the whole day in order to remain awake throughout the night. Thus, when the ogress was fast asleep, the following night, the two boys exchanged their beds once again. As the elder boy had slept enough during the day, he remained awake, true to what his younger brother had said. Soon after the ogress' return, he and his wife started talking about the two brothers in hushed voices. While the husband said that he could hardly wait any longer, the ogress insisted that her husband should wait for just a few days more, and that D-Day would come when the couple would have several wonderful days. So, since that night the elder brother could not hear anything that the husband and the wife talked about, so this arrangement, this shifting of the beds, this exchanging of the sleeping places was to be repeated again. Now the elder brother slept during the whole day. So that entire day the elder brother did not sleep, kept on sleeping so that he could lie awake the whole night. Thus, when the ogress was fast asleep, so when the ogress fell to sleep, the two brothers again exchanged their beds. As the elder boy had slept enough during the day, so since the elder brother slept during the whole day, so he was obviously awake, true to what his younger brother had said. So whatever his younger brother had told him, that was actually true. Because after the husband returned, he and his wife started talking about the two boys in hushed voices. Hushed, very quiet, whispering to each other so that nobody else could hear. While the husband believed that he had to eat the boys, the ogress insisted. She was forcing the husband to wait for some more days, and the D-Day would come when the couple would have several wonderful dinners. D-Day, the final day when they would be able to eat the two boys and they would have wonderful dinners. So the two boys, obviously, you can imagine the other day they are going to eat different parts of the body of these boys. This is what was their plan. The elder boy could hardly believe what he was hearing. He was overcome with fear as their death was imminent. Yet they had been completely ignored about it. Although the husband was very unhappy at having to postpone his grand dinner, he reluctantly agreed to the ogress's suggestion to wait. How lucky were the boys that D-Day was postponed. The elder brother was profusely sweating out of crippling fear, but he was careful not to show any sign of moving. After he was sure that the couple had fallen asleep, he went back to his own bed and the younger one returned to us. So what happened? The elder brother also was now sure and convinced that whatever the younger brother had said was true. So he was overcome with fear. He felt very scared that his death was imminent, that their death was so near to them. Imminent, it was so near to them, and yet they were so ignorant about it. Yet they were not aware of it. They did not know what a danger they were in. Although the husband was very unhappy. So when the ogress had told the husband to wait for a few more days before eating those boys, the husband was not happy. But reluctantly, unwillingly, he said yes to what the ogress had said. How lucky were the boys that the D-Day was postponed. So, the elder brother was just wondering that they were so lucky that the D-Day was only postponed. So, they were supposed to be eaten, it was only delayed. The elder boy was profusely sweating out of crippling fear. profusely, heavily, sweating. So sweat was coming off his body. Why? Because of crippling fear. Crippling fear, the extreme amount of fear, the extreme amount of scariness that had come to him. But he did not move, otherwise the husband and wife would get doubtful. So after he was sure that the husband and wife had slept, he quietly went to his bed and the younger brother returned to his. As morning broke, each of the boys knew that they were to make haste to return home. But how to do so was the problem. The ogress noticed the red eyes of the elder brother and inquired what was wrong. Fully knowing that any sign of nervousness would betray their plan, he told her that his younger brother had thrown some dust into his eyes while playing the previous day, and this had caused the irritation in his eyes. Fortunately, the ogress did not doubt his explanation, and the boy sighed in relief. So, as the morning broke, when it was morning, both the boys knew that they were to make haste to return home. Haste quickly, very quickly. They had to think of a plan so that they could return back to their home. The ogress noticed that the elder brother had red eyes. Now, why did he have red eyes? Because he did not sleep the whole night. So she inquired, she asked the elder brother what the problem was. Fully knowing that any sign of nervousness, she was aware that, the elder brother was aware that if he would show any kind of nervousness, then their plan will get betrayed. It will be a flop. They will not be able to return home and would be eaten then and there. So, what did he tell the ogress? He told the ogress that the previous day, while playing, the younger brother had thrown some dust in his eyes, because of which there was some irritation. Now, good for them, luckily, the ogress believed in what he said. She did not doubt them, and the boy sighed in relief. He took a breath of relief. He was okay. He was comfortable that he was not dead. After the old woman went off to the field, the two brothers rushed into each other's arms. Within a few minutes, the decision to escape was taken without the exchange of many words, as they realized there was no time to lose. After they released each other from their embrace, the younger brother immediately rushed into the ogress's room and picked up all the charms which the ogress had. Their choice was either to be eaten up by the ogress and the ogress, or to be drowned in the river in case the charms did not work. At any rate, they preferred to die a watery death than to be torn into pieces and eaten. The two dashed into the jungle with all the charms tightly held in their palms. After they had covered a certain distance, they came out onto an open path and ran as fast as their feet could carry. So what happened now? After the woman went off to the field that day, the two brothers rushed into each other's arms. So they were so, sad, and they were so nervous that they ran to meet each other and they hugged each other quickly. Within a few minutes, the decision to escape was taken without the exchange of many words. So within a few minutes, they had decided that they are going to escape. They are going to run away from there. They did not even have to say a lot. They did not have to speak a lot. They just decided that they will be leaving. After they released each other from their embrace, the love, that hug, that loving hug that they had given to each other. So once they both let each other free, the younger brother, he went into the ogress's room and he picked up all the charms, all the magical stones that the ogress kept in the basket. Their choice was either to stay there and to be eaten up by the ogre and the ogresses, or to be drowned in the river. Or, you remember when they were coming to this ogress's house, there was a river that they came across, which because of the ogress's charm only parted away. So this was a choice that they had, only if the charms did not work. Now we can very well imagine that these boys were obviously not magicians. They were not ghosts either. They did not know how to use those charms appropriately. So they were just going to take a chance. At any rate, so in any case, they just preferred that they would die a watery death than to be torn into pieces and eaten. So they decided that they would love to drown in the river and die there rather than staying with the ogre and the ogress and to be eaten up by them. The two dashed into the jungle with all the charms held tightly in their palms. So dashed very fast they came to the jungle and all the charms they had in their palms. After they had covered a certain distance, they came out onto an open path. So what happened? That obviously they went to the jungle, and then they realized that the moment they had come near the river, they just started running fast as they could. Several hours later, they came to the big river. They were bewildered as to how to use the charms. Meanwhile, the ogress and the ogre discovered that the two boys had escaped along with the charms and they started in pursuit of them. Indeed, there was imminent danger for the two brothers if caught by the ogre and the ogress. Death was a certainty. On the bank of the river, the boys racked their brains as to which charm to use and how it had been used by the ogress while crossing the river on the earlier occasion. So what happened? After running for a lot of hours, after walking for a lot of hours, they came to this big river. They were bewildered. They were obviously confused how to use those magical stones. Meanwhile, now in this duration, when the boys had reached the river, the ogre and the ogress had also discovered, they also got to know that the boys had run away from their house with those magical stones and they started in pursuit of them. So they started looking for them. Indeed, there was an imminent danger. So, whatever it was, the boys were nearing a danger. They were in a dangerous situation. If they were caught by the husband and wife, then their death was certain. It was sure that they were going to die. Now, when they reached the bank of the river, the boys racked their brains. Racking their brains means they used their brains to the fullest. So they just tried whatever information, knowledge they could gather from that day when they saw the ogress using these magical stones. So they started thinking how and which stone did the ogress had used the other day. After many attempts, they succeeded in using the right charm and the river parted. Their relief was so immense that the brothers embraced each other and waited for a few moments, as the ogress had done previously. Soon enough, the two brothers crossed the river comfortably and went over to the other side of the bank. They looked back towards the opposite side. The boys were indeed lucky to have crossed the river just as the ogre and the ogress almost reached the bank. So, after many attempts, after many trials, they finally succeeded. They were successful in using the right charm and the river parted the way it came. Their relief was so immense. They had such a big satisfaction when this happened that they embraced each other. They hugged each other very tightly, and they waited. After the partition of the river also, they waited for a few minutes, just the way the ogress had done. Soon enough, the boys were able to cross that river in a very comfortable manner, and they reached the other side of the bank. They looked back towards the opposite side. So when they had crossed the river, they looked back to the opposite side. The two boys were indeed lucky to have crossed the river, as the ogre and the ogress almost reached the bank. So they were very lucky to have crossed the river at the right moment, at the right time, because the ogre and the ogress had reached the bank. The ogre and the ogress realized it was useless and their chase had to be abandoned. So once they saw that the boys had crossed the river, they realized that it was of no use now. They could not run after the boys because all the charms were with the boy. They could not cross the river like this, so they had to abandon their chase. They had to stop. They had to give up on what they were doing. Obviously devoid of the charms, they could not cross the river. They looked helplessly at the two fattened boys who had just escaped the jaws of the death. The couple started fighting and tearing at each other. To the utter discomfiture of the couple, the two brothers pointed at them and laughed heartily at their behavior. It was only the grace of God that had saved the two brothers. So, obviously devoid of the charms. Devoid means without. So now, as I told you, they did not have those charms because the younger brother had stolen them. So they could not cross the river. They were just looking helplessly at those two brothers who were now fat enough and they had escaped the jaws of death. So these brothers had actually run away and saved themselves from death. The couple got so frustrated that they started fighting with each other and tearing at each other. They started biting each other. Now to the utter discomfiture, the couple, that is the husband and wife, actually got uncomfortable when those two brothers who were standing on the other side of the river, these two brothers started, pointing at them and laughing heartily. So they were laughing and pointing at them. It was only because of God that the two brothers had saved. The villagers were astonished to see the two brothers alive. They were sure that either the ogre or the ogress had eaten them up or they had drowned in the river. As was customary upon the boys' disappearance, the entire village had organized a thorough search, but gave it up when they found the footprints of the ogress at their trapping site. Naturally, in the wake of their safe return, the entire village was overjoyed and they celebrated Deliverance Day. Since the charms were in the boys' possession now, they needed no longer to be fearful of the dreadful acts of the ogress and the ogre. The story goes on to say that even after their return, the two brothers took to trapping as their permanent profession. They also grew rich and lived a very comfortable life. So, the villagers were very astonished. They were shocked and surprised to see that the two boys were alive. They were sure, they knew that either the ogre or the ogress had eaten these two boys or they were drowned in the river. As was customary as it is usually done, once these two boys disappeared, once these two boys were nowhere to be found, the entire village organized a search for them. So they were searching for them, and finally they saw that at the place, where the boys used to trap the birds and animals, they found the footprints of the ogress. And it was then when they were sure that the boys had been caught by the ogress. Naturally, in the wake of their safe return. So, in order to celebrate the return of those two boys in a safe manner, the entire village was very happy and they celebrated Deliverance Day. So, deliverance is the word which is derived from deliver. So, the boys were very safely back to their village, so they celebrated Deliverance Day. Since the boys had those charms now, obviously they were not afraid of the ogress because they could not come to their village. And the story goes on to say that even after their return, so once they returned back, they continued to do what they were doing earlier. They continued to trap the birds and the animals, and they grew rich and they lived very comfortably. So, my dear students, this story, this folk tale by R. Buchan is basically about the two boys who actually had a very lucky escape from the jaws of death. So, what did we read in this chapter? We read about the two orphans who lost their parents and started living alone at a very young age. They were taken care of by their relatives who used to give them food in teams. But they were not happy with this arrangement and they wanted to do something to be independent. They decided that they would trap birds and animals, and that is how they are going to earn money. The villagers helped them to make their hut. They started trapping birds and animals and were quite good at it. But what happened? Slowly they realized that the heads of the birds were gone missing. So they were not able to understand the reason behind it. The villagers told them that you should try and hunt somewhere else. They did that also. For a few days everything was okay, but then everything got back to normal and the heads of the birds went missing again. It was then when the boys decided that they are going to hide behind a tree and find the culprit, the person responsible for this red habit. The first time when they gave this attempt, they were not successful and could not come across anyone. But they were sure that if in case it was a small animal or some other boy of the village who was behind it, they would fight. But if it was a big animal responsible for this, they are not going to move from their places. They were surprised to see that it was that ogress. They found the woman to be very untidy and very dirty. They came to her in order to ask her the reason why she was doing it. But that woman was an ogress. So under her magical spell, she actually convinced the two boys that she was a good lady who was, very loving and affectionate. And she also told them that she was one of their close relatives and she wanted the two boys to live with her. The boys could not do anything because they were trapped in the magical spell of the old woman. So they started following the old woman to her village. On the way, they came across a river. The boys got scared, but the woman took out a charm, a magical stone from her hand, threw at the river, because of which the river divided into two. Now the boys crossed it in a very comfortable manner. Now the boys, the moment they crossed it, they were scared, but they just could not do anything. They started living with the woman and her husband. For the initial few days, the woman did not leave them at all. She convinced them that she was a good relative and she meant good for them. But when the boys had become comfortable, she told them to sleep separately at night. So the younger boy was supposed to sleep with her in the room where all those magical charms were kept, and the elder brother had to sleep in the other room. Now, one day, the younger brother actually heard the husband and the wife talking to each other and discussing with each other that they wanted to eat the roots. This made the younger one really scared. He did not know what to do. The other day he told his brother. The elder one was not ready to believe it. But then they decided to interchange their beds that night. The first night, nothing happened. The second night, the elder brother heard them talking bad about them, and that is when the next day they planned to run away. So they ran away. Very successfully, they were able to cross the river, and they finally reached back their village, where once again they resumed their business of trapping the birds and the animals, became successful and rich. So this is how our story ended.